None from my side. I was looking, it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 logged in. Besides you guys.
So we've got
Sarah, Jeanette, Jonathan, and then someone's on their phone. So I don't mind waiting a couple more minutes.
Okay, that sounds good.
I'd rather do that than have people chime in.
Yeah.
Once we've started.
Joining from their 3 to 4 meetings or meetings that we're supposed to end at 4, I suppose.
Yep.
So Jeanette and Sarah, I'm gonna, and we've got Jonathan too. If you guys want to jump off mute and say hello, or if you guys are not in a place to say hello, completely understand too. We're gonna wait maybe another minute or two just to let folks join. Welcome. We so appreciate you joining. I see Jeanette there. Jeanette's good to see your face. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
Good. And where are you joining us from? Are you from Indianapolis area here, or where's home base for you?
Yes, Indianapolis.
Great. And is that your real library behind you, or is that a background library?
This is from a place that I actually attended. It's the Huntsman Cancer Hospital in Salt Lake City. I was there for a conference, and this is a library in one of their waiting room areas. I just thought it was fabulous.
Oh man, yeah, sign me up for that.
Yes.
That's great. I see.
So Jeanette, why don't you share your role, what organization you're with, what brings you to join the presentation?
Okay. I have been a member of ACHE for probably 4 or 5 years now. I am now the Director of Education and Professional Development for the Indiana State Medical Association. I have worked in organizational development roles in healthcare for most of my career. I'm also a registered nurse. I have background in community health education, very, very interested in population health, post-acute care. I just see a lot of really good, exciting directions that match up well with the experiences that I've had. And so I have, this was a goal that I had when I joined ACHE, and I've really enjoyed going to the various educational programs and just learning a whole broad range of things. So I've been very, very happy. I love learning. And so I just love the whole broad scope of things I've been able to learn about the industry. So I've already applied. I had, my 2 letters submitted and ready to go. I'm just thinking about what's my next step.
Okay. Sorry, Joseph, I just jumped in there.
I love it. That's great. That's why I always love joining these and having you guide us through. I was going to pick on one more person before we got going, and it's either going to be Jonathan or Sarah, because I can see you guys. So
I'll go. Can you hear me?
There you go. Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, Jonathan.
Oh, wonderful to meet you all. I'm here in Whitestown, Indiana, Zionsville kind of area, if you're familiar with Indiana, but lead Vice President of Solution Consulting at Change Healthcare, leading our pre-sales efforts as far as our tech and services across the industry. So wonderful to be here. I've been to many ACHE sessions across the U.S. over the last couple of years, being a representative within our organization, and look forward to learning more about becoming a fellow.
Very good.
Great. Well, thanks for jumping in there, Jonathan. Appreciate it. We have Debbie and Sarah and Brad and one more likely call-in user here. So we will, let's go ahead and jump in. I want to make sure that there's plenty of time now that we've got more folks. We probably will have more joining, and we'll ask for them to listen in on what Annette starts sharing for us.
Yeah.
I'll do a very brief introduction and let Annette take it and run from there. I've had a chance to join a couple of these sessions, both out of interest and striving towards this certification, but also just because I enjoy the passion that she brings to helping members of this ACHE community here. So Annette's master's trained in both physical therapy and in healthcare administration, and she is leading by example because she got her fellow certification, I believe, back in 2013 or shortly around that time frame.
Yep.
got about 15 years of experience with Rehab Hospital of Indiana, and then did some work with Franciscan St. Francis, and then Franciscan Health, and then she's currently the executive leader with Community Rehab Hospital on the north side in Indianapolis here. So she's, like I shared, she's been doing these advancement sessions and really takes us under her wing and helps us understand next steps, and I'm excited for you guys to hear from her today. So without further ado, Annette, expand upon that or jump in. Okay.
I don't think I have anything to add. You covered it all. I think the only thing, well, I guess first of all, make sure I wasn't covering my mic there, that everybody can hear me. I mean, I think the only other thing I'll add heading into this is I am just a colleague and a peer. So some of your questions I'll be able to answer. I'm definitely not a representative of ACHE directly. So sometimes some of the questions, depending on what comes up, I may have to rely on someone like Joseph or Corey to help maybe follow up and circle back from ACHE, but do the best I can and speak from experience. So the first thing I want to say is just thank you for joining us today. To go through this. It's typically not an hour. It kind of depends on how many questions you have. I sometimes flip between the PowerPoint and Internet Explorer, the website. So I'm not going to put this in presentation mode. It just makes it easier for me to flip back and forth. But a little bit of what I plan to talk about today, you can see there on the screen in talking about some of the benefits of getting your FASCI and pursuing that. And then we'll also review the eligibility and the criteria and what's the process to actually pass and earn the designation. And then a few tips on just how to study and prepare. Finally, assuming everyone's going to do awesome in getting their FASCI, we'll touch base on what it takes to re-credential and recertify 3 years from now. So some of the things that I look at, I think you wouldn't be here on this presentation if you didn't kind of already think that there was some value in becoming a FASCI. So a few of these things is we know that it helps recognize our members as leaders in healthcare management. The other thing, I think a lot of us believe in evidence-based care and evidence-based delivery of services. And this, I think, is another example of where there's rigorous standards and a system to establish competency, so that we know that individuals who sit for the Board of Governors and pass it are truly at a different level as far as their competence and their dedication to the field of healthcare leadership. I think it shows your commitment for going the extra step. A lot of people feel once they get especially into a senior level leadership position, there's not a need to do this. So I think showing your ongoing commitment to development is something that I've always personally valued, especially a lot of us are lifelong learners from that perspective. I do think it helps you stand out in the community and professionally. I know over the years in talking to some boards, if it came down to 2 candidates all being equal, some boards will tend to lean towards the candidate that has their fellow when they're selecting who to lead their organization. So some of this I already talked about because I'm perfect at just rambling and forgetting about my slides. But again, what you'll gain, demonstrating those leadership competencies, demonstrating your lifelong commitment to change and improvement, strengthening your leadership value. I think one of the biggest things I've enjoyed is just the interaction with the other fellows. When I first joined ACHE and went to my first Congress, I didn't, it was a great event, but I think I didn't know as many people. And through some of the fellows only opportunities, I think there was just a connection that I was able to make as a fellow that I wasn't as a regular member of ACHE. I've really appreciated that. And I think it's just something, maybe it's from an ego perspective, I don't know, but I just am proud of having that degree and of having passed that exam. And I think a lot of people take pride in that accomplishment. I think some of the things we want to look at is how do you know if you're eligible to apply? I know at least Jeanette spoke a little bit in the beginning that you've already been through some of these steps, so they'll sound very familiar versus Jonathan, who may be just starting out with the application process. You know, how do I even know if I qualify? So when we look at some of the eligibility requirements, the first thing you have to know is you're going to have to be a member of ACHE for 3 years. That changed to 1 year effective January 1st of this year. I forgot that changed. So you have to be a member of ACHE. If you're a faculty or an international associate, that does count. I would like to point out, I don't know who's all on here, but student associates do not count. I think that's important to point out. If I speak from experience, I started out as a staff physical therapist that worked my way up through leadership. And when I went back to school to get my MHA, like anyone, I first joined ACHE on a student membership just because it was cheaper. But I already had plenty of years of leadership experience. And I quickly realized that it didn't make sense for me to stay a student associate. It's almost like it's wasted years as a member. So I just encourage people to become a full-fledged member as soon as they can to help work towards this requirement here. When we look at the education, pretty straightforward, but you have to hold a master's or some other post-baccalaureate degree. It doesn't necessarily have to be one over another. It can be an MHA, MPH, MBA, MPA, but it does just have to be a master's or a post-baccalaureate degree. And then here is one that is a sticking point for a lot of people. It does require 5 years of healthcare management experience. You have to be employed by a healthcare organization. You have to have a position that must be at least a department director or department head level. Obviously, some positions clearly qualify. If you're in a C-suite position, CEO, COO, those sorts of positions qualify. Some individuals have titles of more program manager, specialist, fellows, residents. Those are going to be positions that are most likely not going to qualify. When you do apply, you're going to have to submit along with your application a copy of your job description, your organizational chart, and your resume that will help determine that. But this is one of those examples. If I go, oops, hold on, give me 1 second here because I logged out accidentally. There is a great explanation on the ACHE website. If you go to their FASHE section, come on, computer, there we go. So when you look at view requirements, there is a section, I like to walk people through this. There is a section on the healthcare management experience. So if you're in a not obvious job title, I do recommend that you come out here because there are some formal definitions. And you can see that to be eligible for advancement, your position has to be at a department director, department head level. You have to be able to show that you have control over departmental budgeting, planning, staffing, and accountability. And if you come down further, there are some descriptions. So for example, if you're an administrator, a CEO, a consultant, military, or even a registered nurse. But I like some of these here that if I am, for example, a nurse by background, I have to hold at least a department director or head level position where at least 50% of my time is devoted to managing administrative functions. If I am in a teaching institution or healthcare management faculty, I must hold a program director or chair position. If you're a physician, again, at least 50% of your time has to be devoted to managing administrative functions. So some of these, what I encourage people to do when you do your application is, if your title isn't obvious, such as CEO, COO, director, is to really think through your responsibility and phrase things on your resume, or when you get your letters of reference, have those people phrase things in a way that really shows how you have control over department responsibilities, budgeting, strategic planning, any of those kinds of things, to just help yourself get into that role. They are clear that folks that lead more projects, if you're in a project management type role, those are going to be positions that probably don't qualify under the criteria. I was trying to see, you can see here the applicants whose management authority is at a project or program level do not qualify. These are going to be the people with the titles more of analyst, coordinator, program manager, project manager, specialist. So sometimes that's an area that raises questions. So I just encourage you to pay attention to your job title and responsibilities. There's a matrix, and I'm not going to talk about that. One of the things you have to do is you have to have 2 references. This is not something that's difficult to do. One of these is what's called a structured interview with a current fellow. That is one where it's more making sure you're familiar with ACHE, making sure that it's someone that is, committed to that lifelong learning, someone that wants to be a mentor for others, all of those types of things. I'm going to be honest, if you pick someone who is already a fellow that that structured interview isn't really all that structured because they already know you. If you do not know someone who is a fellow to do your structured interview, a lot of us are willing to do that. I mean, almost all of us are willing to do that. I'm more than happy to be a reference for anyone. ACHE also has a list of fellows that are willing to be references. If we don't know you, just don't be surprised if there's at least a phone conversation to get to know you and better understand for sure what your commitments and goals and all of that are. These are done electronically through the ACHE website. It's pretty quick and easy. You enter who you want to be your reference. ACHE sends them an email with a link. They go out to that link and they fill out the reference, and it does not take very long at all. I know, Jeanette, you said you've had your references submitted already. I don't know if you got any feedback from anyone that was a reference, but it's not a very difficult process at all.
That's right. Yeah, it went very, very well. And because of just attendance at various events, I had several really good options for references. Yeah.
So the next thing that has to happen is you do have to have 36 hours of healthcare management continuing education within the last 3 years. 12 hours of that has to be face-to-face, and then the remaining hours of that can be qualified education. The face-to-face are obviously the most complicated to get. I think IHEN does an excellent job of attaching face-to-face CEUs to its regular meetings. And I think that's a great way to get them. They're not very expensive, and you can accumulate quite a few over that 3-year period. I also think I recommend the biggest bang for your buck is going to Congress. You can get those 12 hours in one fell swoop as far as those face-to-face education. Depending on your schedule too, once we're back to real life going in person events, there is a track, the second half of Congress, that is a little less expensive than the first half of Congress. So you can get those 12 hours of face-to-face credits by going to the last few days of Congress, and it's very cost-effective that way. With the remaining hours, you can get those in a variety of ways. So when I was with Franciscan, I got some face-to-face by going through SG2 webinars or conferences. My organization has some leadership development conferences for upper level management, and I've submitted some of those as qualified education. Obviously, IHEN helps you with things. There are self-study courses. There's a variety of ways that you can get these education credits. Just remember that you have to have 36 hours and then keeping track that at least 12 of them are ACHE. One advantage to doing your continuing education through ACHE is ACHE will then automatically track your credits, and there is a spot on the website in My ACHE where you can see exactly how many credits you have to apply. If you're doing education that is not through ACHE, you're going to have to plug that into the system yourself and submit for the continuing ed. I think I already read some of this. Joseph, I don't know. I honestly don't know. So I'm going to ask you a question. I know we were doing virtual ACHE face-to-face events through this summer. Do you know if the virtual are going to are continuing?
That's a good question. And I would lean on Corey if she's still on, because she's connected with the other committees. To the best of my understanding, yes, but
okay.
I would be surprised if we aren't continuing with those. I know Corey's been off for a couple of weeks, and she's the connective tissue between all of our different groups.
I'm still here, Joe, and we are hoping in August or September to try and resume some in-person, but also looking at how we can also provide virtual options as well for our members who prefer that. So there will be some updates hopefully soon as we work on those programs. And
Very
also,
good.
all of our virtual programs that we've had are on our website under our events page, and those can be viewed at any time and self-reported as qualified education credits. So for people who are always looking to get more qualified education credits in, that's a great resource is to go watch past events.
Perfect.
Yep.
I need to do that because for those of you that are late, prepping for this, I realized I'm behind on my own education credits. So I will be looking for some of those qualified education credits. There are out there on the website, just so you know, there's on-demand webinar recordings you can participate in. A lot of times those are worth 1 to 1.5 qualified hours. There are online seminars you can do, live webinars, self-study courses, and then like Corey said, several things through the chapter as well. The last, one of the next things is that you have to be involved from a volunteer perspective. You need to have 2 healthcare related volunteer activities within the past 3 years and 2 community or civic activities within the last 3 years. ACHE does let you somewhat self-designate whether something is a healthcare related activity or a community civic activity. When you go to submit your application, you're going to type those into the website and pick which they are. While some things are going to be ongoing for those 3 years, for example, I serve on a committee for the Indiana Hospital Association that meets quarterly. That is an ongoing activity for me. On the other hand, I may have a community activity such as maybe we do Habitat for Humanity one weekend, or maybe I organize a Heart Walk team. That's more of a one and done type activity. Those qualify as well. So when it says 2 community or civic activities, don't necessarily assume you have to be involved in 2 activities on a monthly or quarterly or yearly basis. It can be split up. Some of the examples when you look at healthcare related activities, those could include serving on ACHE, being a part of the advisory board, or doing presentations like what I'm doing now. Maybe it's being involved in some other healthcare related organization, whether that's MGMA, APTA, IHA, any of those sorts of things. It could be involvement in community health fairs. It could be things like volunteering or participating in a blood drive. It could be speaking at a conference on a healthcare related topic. All of those could be examples of healthcare related activities. When you look at community civic, maybe you're part of a charitable or a religious organization. Maybe you're serving on a local school or community board. Maybe you're participating in fundraising events. I'm involved in the Sam Schmidt Paralysis Foundation. That can kind of count. Maybe you're coaching a youth sports team and volunteering to do that. Or you're involved with a local 4-H or a scout group. All of those can kind of count, and you can see some of those could swing either towards community or towards healthcare. So that's the advantage of some self-designation. If I'm light in one area, I can kind of rearrange a little bit to meet my needs. And then the last thing is to pass the last thing. The last thing is to pass the Board of Governors exam. So this is where we get the reliable and valid assessment of competencies, which we're going to go through exactly what that means. But that's basically the eligibility requirements to become a FASHE. You're looking at your membership in ACHE, that you've got that master's or post-baccalaureate, you've got that management leadership experience, your 2 references, your 36 units of education, and your 2 health-related and community or civic-related volunteer activities. So then what we get into is how you actually apply. And there is, on the website, I'll actually go out to it. You can come out to the website under the FASHE section, and there is a whole section on how to start my application. You'll create an account for my ACHE to log in. And at that point, I don't know if it'll let me do it since I'm already a member, but you will log in to start to complete that application process. I have to log in again. We're going to skip that. You can see there's sections for you to upload for your membership, your degrees, your work history, your healthcare, community, civic activities, all of those you'll log. There, you'll go to the My Education credits, and that's where you can see if you have any ACHE credits that are applicable towards your Board of Governors.
Hey, Annette.
Yeah.
I'm keeping an eye on the chat for us here. And in
Oh,
addition
I'm
to
sorry.
Corey,
Thank you.
Oh, you're totally fine. Corey's been dropping some good nuggets from a promotion that we've had for folks to think about with waiving the fee. But there was a question in there too about from Sarah about whether folks that are seeking to apply as they're waiting for that membership requirement. So as I read the question, if she's waiting for that 4th year, can she begin doing the volunteer hours or logging those things, or does it only start once you've met that requirement? Do you know the answer to that?
So you're not going to be able to take the exam until you meet all of the requirements. So on some of those things, they have to have occurred within 3 years. So if I know in 2022, I'm going to be eligible to sit for the exam, my volunteer activities and education has to have occurred between 2019 and 2022. If I don't think I'm going to be able to sit for the exam until 2024, doing stuff in 2020 didn't help you. But it just has to be in that three-year window. But you're not going to be able to apply for the exam anymore until you meet all of the criteria. Used to be I could take the exam first, and then I just hung out until I hit all the criteria. Now it's the other way around. So Sarah, I don't know if that answers your question. Maybe, yes. Okay. Thank you, because I don't have the chat up and open.
No,
so
you're fine. I'll keep an eye on it for you. It fit within the flow there too. So thanks for addressing that.
Yeah, I'm actually going to turn it back to you, Joseph, for a second, because what I was going to say is there is an application fee. to take there's a fee for the application and there is a fee for taking the test. So when you submit your application and your application fee, that application is valid for 2 years. So you have another 2 years to be able to take the test technically. But it is 2 different fees, which is why I highly recommend that you apply during a period in which there's a waiver for the exam fee, which is I think what we have going on right now.
Yep, you bet. Through the end of this month, so through June 30th, that 200, and so there's to your point in that 2 numbers. There's the exam fee, which is 225, and then the application fee, which is 250, and the savings is on that fee, the waiving of that fee.
Yep. So you can do this anytime you want and pay $500, or you can take advantage of the opportunity now and save yourself a little over $200. When you're ready and you submit all of that information online, what's then going to happen is you're going to register to take your exam. You'll get confirmation that you're eligible. You'll then register to take your exam. And I apologize, this is a standard presentation. I went to a Sylvan Learning Center, not necessarily a Pearson VUE, but you'll go to a standardized testing location to take your test. I'm old enough that when I took my licensure test, I had to drive to Chicago and take it with a number 2 pencil. So this was my first experience at one of these computerized testing sites. And they're very strict in making you put all of your belongings in a locker and checking you out to go to the restroom, all of that kind of stuff. But when you register, it does take probably 5 to 7 days for them to process your registration. And then they will send you the information once they've processed your application so that you can go out and sign up to actually take the test. When you go to take the test and you're sitting in the exam center and you complete the test on the computer, you're going to get your results pass, fail instantly. So you're going to walk out of that exam center knowing if you have passed or not. The pass rate is about 73% is what I've been told, versus and then the passing score is about 65%. That is what the person that teaches this from ACHE told me late last year. So it might be a little bit different. 6 months has passed since I've been given those numbers, but about 73% pass on their first try. And it takes about a 65% score to pass the test. It is a neat experience once you pass to participate in the ceremony at Congress for the next year. If you do want to participate in that graduation ceremony, you do have to pass it by December 31st to be eligible for Congress the next March. Don't worry if you don't pass. It's okay. Just know you can wait, you have to wait 60 days, and then you're more than welcome to apply and take it again. I always tell people when I took the test, I had two mentors that gave me 2 drastically different ends of the spectrum. I had one person who read every single possible resource and book that ACHE recommended to prepare for the exam. And I had another person tell me, oh, just go take the test. What's the worst thing that happens? You fail, you learn what you need to study, and you come back and take it again. So that's one of my recommendations, depending on your personality, is just take the test. And so that's kind of the application process. It's all done online. Once you submit the application, within a week, you'll get notified by ACHE that your registration's been processed, and they'll send you notification that you can schedule your exam. And then we come to the fun exam. So the exam is 230 questions, multiple choice. It's from 10 knowledge areas They allow you 6 hours to complete it. I think when I took mine, it took me about 4 to take the test. The interesting thing is that only 200 of those questions are real. 30 of those questions are test questions that they're trialing to see if they want to put on future exams. The hard part is you have no idea which questions are which. So as I sat there and I struggled with a question, then doubt would come into my mind of, should I even be worrying about this question because I don't even know if it's a real question or not. So they're just intermixed and you have no idea, but I will say it did take me about 4 hours to complete. They are divided into various knowledge areas. You can see those knowledge areas here and the number of questions dedicated to them. So the biggest area, most of the questions are geared towards healthcare in general. And then you have 13% of the questions are geared towards management and leadership, 12% are geared towards finance, 11% towards human resources, et cetera. So it's one of those where, depending on your strengths, if I don't have a lot of experience with governance and organizational structure, sure, I'm going to study and prepare for that, but I'm not going to worry too much because that's really only accounting for 6% of my exam. Versus if I don't have as much experience or knowledge in the areas of finance, that's counting for 12% of my exam. I may want to shore up that area a little bit. So just keeping that in mind. There's a lot of different ways you can prepare for the exam. This is what ACHE recommends as far as allowing 3 to 6 months. I really advise it depends on your current position and comfort level from a leadership perspective. When I sat for it, I was more at a manager, first-time director level. And I think I took closer to 6 months to a year to study because I did not have a lot of experience with strategic planning and finance versus those of you that are in C-suite positions or have a lot of exposure to that. It may only take you 3 months to refresh some things. So you really have to just look at your own comfort level there and plan also how you like to study and prepare. One way that you can do it is, oops, I didn't update this, I apologize. So this is an old date, so ignore that. Ignore all these dates, I apologize. But there is a virtual Board of Governors course. A lot of times there's one at Congress in the couple of days before Congress. It's designed that you go in person, they take you through the 10 knowledge areas, go over all of them, and then really it's designed the next day you could sit down and take the Board of Governors exam. If you're the type of person that likes in-person education and wants to get it all in one fell swoop, this is a great opportunity. You do earn 12 face-to-face education credits. So when we talked about those 36 hours and 12 face-to-face, this is a great way to get it. Some of the other ways, there is an on-demand or an online tutorial. This is the one that I have, and the prices here may not be accurate because they're from last winter, I apologize. This is what I chose to do. I got CDs with a lecture that I could listen to over each of the 10 knowledge areas. I got a nice textbook that covered in one textbook all of the 10 knowledge areas and the PowerPoint slides to go along with those. I could then work on this one a little bit more at my own pace. I could listen to the lecture, review the PowerPoint, read the materials. It had all of the information that you needed, but you just have to be more committed to doing it on your own time. So that was a nice opportunity. It did offer 10 education hours at the same time. Then there are study sets available if you really just want to totally kind of go it on your own. There's a list of recommended books. This list is also out on the website, but you can get these, and these cover those 10 knowledge areas somewhat broadly. There are also some flashcards, although I went out to the website right before class started and it said the flashcards are on back order. But if I remember right, I don't know if Corey or Joseph are still on. I think the IHIN chapter has some flashcards.
Yep, that's exactly right. Actually, right before Corey had to jump off, she did share that we do have some available.
Okay, so those are a great opportunity. And then there is what's called a, that's the online tutorial. So those are some of the resources that you can do. There is what I could not find prior to class starting, but Corey sent to us in the chat, is there is a 200 question practice test that feel free to take that link from Corey and you can go through the questions. The thing that I found with this is that the questions were very, a lot of them were very didactic in nature. Yet when I took the exam for real, it wasn't as much of a didactic test. A lot of the questions are, when you take the test, are what is the best option? Or what is the first thing you would do? Or what's the most important thing to do? And you would find that 3 of the 4 answers are items that you would do, but you had to sit there and think through which was the best, which was the first, which was the most important. So I do just caution you a little bit with this practice test is that some of it, it's a little bit more just didactic in nature. I kept getting questions wrong on this, and I found out, when I finally took the Board of Governors, no matter how often I retook this test, I really wasn't going to get any more prepared for the Board of Governors just because of how they asked the questions. But do know that that's an option. Assuming you're going to pass, because you are, your certification is good for 3 years. Over those 3 years before you recertify, you have 2 ways to recertify. I highly recommend option 1, which is continue to get 36 hours of education over the next 3 years, with 12 of those being face-to-face, and continuing to do 2 healthcare and 2 community civic activities. If you do that, you're going to have a recertification fee, and you're going to recertify every 3 years. Option 2 is to take the Board of Governors exam again, which I would not really recommend. But if you're the one that wants to do that, if I don't jump on my education, that might be my option this year. So every 3 years, you will have to recertify by getting those 36 hours and continuing with your healthcare and civic related activities. And that is pretty much the presentation as far as just kind of the eligibility requirement, a really high level overview of eligibility requirements, process to apply, options for studying to taking the test, and then actually taking the test. I will say taking the test, depending on how you're doing it, there was an opportunity to flag questions to come back and review them. And so when I started to take it, about the 40th question, I realized I'd flagged 30 of them. And at some point, I just had to start answering questions. Like I said, at the very end, once you press submit, it's going to spin its wheel for a second, and then you're going to get your answer as to whether you passed or failed. So I do think I sat there like, am I going to push the button? Am I not going to push the button? But it is kind of nice to know that there's that instantaneous response. And again, if you don't pass, just wait 60 days and take it again. But with that, I like to leave, I think because this was an hour-long presentation, I rushed through a few of the things at the end because I wanted to make sure there was time for any questions at all. And I'm trying to figure out how to open the chat. There we go. So let me look through the chat.
I don't know if there were any direct questions outside of what Sarah asked. So this is, folks, we're very thoughtful to stay on mute, and I appreciate that. But this is a good time to come off mute if you do have questions. And as you're thinking through the question for Annette, she's our expert in this. So I I will route all questions to her. I will share that my role in this gathering is the connection to our career development committee within IHEN. So we've got a group, many of which are fellows. So I'm joining this as a hopeful fellow, but not yet working through this process, and committed to this committee that I lead to connect you with resources. So tons of great tips, tricks, and experience shared by Annette. And we've also got this volunteer committee behind this body of work as well. So just another thing to share and emphasize. And Corey, as our administrator with IHEN, is as you've seen in the chat, a wealth of information and coordination for us. So that's the only thing I'll add and share. What questions do you have for Annette? This would be great time well spent asking or getting feedback on what might be a barrier for you or what might be a concern for you.
One of the main reasons that I wanted to attend this was to think about how to study for the exam and what would work best for me. And I know about my study habits, but I just wanted to clarify. You said there is kind of a self-guided course that has the one textbook, and the CDs have lectures and PowerPoint slides.
Yes.
That was one of my questions, because I had seen the set of books and I thought about ordering that, but I thought, I don't know if I need all of those books depending on what other option I might pick. So it sounds like the set of books is really if you just want to do it on your own without the CDs and the PowerPoints. And then the other option would be you can actually take a course where there are instructors, right?
Right. Okay. And so the virtual Board of Governors exam, obviously that one's going to be your most expensive one, and it's going to have limited occurrences through the year. But it is the one I do know about is the one that's right before Congress, for the couple of days before Congress starts. And then it's designed that you can go and take the test. On the website, if you go, there's a Board of Governors online tutorial. And that is the one where it will get you the PowerPoint slides, the audio lectures, and the reading materials together.
Okay.
Looks like the current rate is $550 if you're a member, $650 if you're not a member yet, and the credits are 10 education credits with that. And they will send the whole thing to you in one little package with the book, the disc, and all of that.
Okay.
And that was the nice thing where obviously I took it back in 2013, so I'm not sure if they've been updated or not, but the instructors on those audio lectures were very good about saying, if I were you, I would look for these key words and I would study this. So they were really good about giving you some specific examples. And again, I think some of these depend on your comfort level. So if you take finance, for example, I knew how to do, I was doing departmental budgets and doing all of that, but some of the questions may be, more about leverage. And if capital is going one way, how would you, if bonds are going one way, what would you do over here? So some of that I definitely wasn't as familiar with, and the lectures on finance were really helpful for me. Versus if your background is a controller, you probably ignored that chapter and you may have done a different chapter. But this is what I did and found it extremely helpful.
Okay.
I'm the type, I watched the PowerPoint, I tried to read the chapter, do the PowerPoint, and do the audio lecture together, and then read the next chapter, do the PowerPoint and audio together, and take my own notes that I could kind of reference and flip through.
Okay. And I called the ACHE office to ask about registering for the exam. And they said that I could pick a date for the exam. And if I needed to change that, if something came up, I would be able to do that. So that was nice to know that if something happens, because life gets in the way at times, and you need a little more time than you thought, then you can change the date.
Right. I actually, I scheduled mine on a Saturday And my only hesitancy of recommending a weekend one to individuals is when I arrived at the Sylvan Learning Center, they had an IT glitch and they could not get the Board of Governors exam to download. And then no one from ACHE help desk was there because it was the weekend.
Oh,
So I was all prepared. I'd studied, I'd done all of that. And there was no way we could get the Board of Governors exam to come up. And with ACHE's help desk not being open, I had to reschedule it for a future date. And I made sure that I took it on a weekday just because I didn't want to go through that again.
yeah.
Other questions I can answer for anyone?
No questions. Just it was interesting to go log into my profile and make sure I have everything prepared to make those next steps. So I'm pretty close. I think I need like 1 or 2 more credits. So not too far.
Yeah. Very good. Go for it, Jonathan. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm going for it. I just looked to it. It's actually, I probably don't need those credits because I'm showing a 0 as my Congress credits for this year. But I was actually a presenter at Congress this year, so I'll make sure I go in there and get those up.
Yeah,
it'll be fun.
Yeah. I mean, I really think all of you are experienced healthcare leaders. That sometimes when you first read a question, it may be an area you're not as comfortable with. I found I very easily could always narrow it down to 2 answers. And then I don't think any more studying would have prepared me to answer that question anymore. It just really was thinking about your experiences and in your exposure and going somewhat with your gut based on your own experiences, you'll get there. But I feel like you could get it down to 2 of the choices pretty quickly. And then it just, you had to go with what your experience tells you, which is one of the big reasons for the years of healthcare leadership experience to be able to sit for it.
Sure.
Any other questions? Otherwise, that's it. That's all I got.
I've got one, and I apologize. I was
Oh, hi
late, so
there.
I didn't get to join right at the beginning. So at the point of actually submitting the application, so it's you do all the prerequisites, and then when you've got those all completed and you're ready to take the test, that's when you go ahead and submit the application. Is that correct?
Correct. It used to be you could take the exam and then it used to be you could take the exam while you waited for your membership, but now you have to have the 1 year of membership, you have to have your references, you have to have your credits, you have to have all of that to be able to sit for the exam. So you can begin to load those into ACHE like Jonathan has, and it can track when you've met everything, and then at that point, submit your application fee. They'll process that, get back to you within a week and tell you they've processed it. They've reviewed all your eligibility requirements. You meet all the requirements, and then they'll tell you can move forward with scheduling. At that point, you have 2 years in which you can actually sit to take the exam. So it is somewhat up to you. Like if you know you want to study for 6 months, you can go ahead and apply now. But take a few months before you sit for the exam.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? All right. That's it. Oh, wait a minute. Did my chat just pop up?
Just one. I think you just got some kudos in there.
Yeah. That's true. Yes. Sarah and I are both, I have our facility dog from Canine Companions for Independence, and she's a puppy raiser for Canine Companions. So yeah, we have a little puppy connection.
That's great.
All right.
2 more saying, any final questions? All right, well, on behalf of this group, Annette and the Career Development Committee, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
I've really learned a lot and appreciate it. And folks that joined, thank you for doing so. And Corey and I will make sure we get materials out. This has obviously been recorded, so this will have a larger reach too than just this tonight. So thank you so much, and be happy to follow up and make some connections after this as well. Have a great evening. Thanks, Annette.
Thanks.